You think you're controlling the trade, but the trade is controlling you. You sit in front of the screen, perfectly prepared, telling yourself this is the day you finally act like a professional. You swear to follow the rules. You promise you won't repeat the same mistakes. You breathe in, click buy, and in that single moment your identity attaches to a candle. The chart, once harmless, suddenly becomes a battlefield where every tick feels like a personal attack. A small pullback appears, and fear knocks. Your heartbeat rises. You start calculating outcomes that don't even exist yet. A tiny drop becomes a massive threat. Logic says, it's just a pullback. But fear whispers, this trade might fail, and if it fails, what does that say about you? You move your stop, not because the strategy said so, but because your ego demanded more space. Your breathing grows shallow. Your pulse sinks with the candles. Every second feels heavier. A flicker of red becomes a story of disaster. You aren't observing anymore. You're reacting. You're no longer a trader. You're a victim trying to survive your own imagination. You tell yourself you're okay with losses. Until you face one. That red number doesn't just represent risk. It represents failure. It represents not being enough. And that's when fear takes full control. The calm voice fades. The panicked one takes over. You start bargaining with reality. It'll turn around. Just give it a little more space. I'll close when it gets back to break-even. But that moment never comes. You're trapped inside the trade, like a prisoner behind glass, watching your own plan collapse. You're not protecting capital. You're protecting pride. The market tests you, pushes you, exposes you. Every candle reveals something you've been hiding, the insecurity you bury under confidence, the doubt behind every decision, the desperation to prove you're not a failure. Because that's what losing feels like, not a financial hit, a personal one. Trading doesn't attack your wallet first. It attacks your weaknesses. It forces you to confront every fear you refuse to admit, fear of being wrong, fear of missing out, fear of losing control. And that fear, once alive, begins to dominate. You enter trades too early. You exit too late. You revenge trade to heal the wound. You gamble to forget the pain. You're no longer trading the chart. You're trading your emotional survival. And deep down, you know it. You know when you're forcing. You know when you're chasing. You know when you're breaking your own rules. But awareness isn't enough. Because emotions don't need permission. They take control the moment uncertainty shows up. And in trading, uncertainty never leaves. You came here thinking discipline means sticking to rules. But real discipline is something deeper. It's choosing logic over panic when everything in you is screaming to do the opposite. And that's where you break. Not when the chart moves against you, but when your emotions do. The market doesn't destroy you. You destroy yourself trying to control the market. Every loss isn't just a number. It's a reflection of who you become under pressure, of how you react when challenged, of what you fear when outcomes aren't guaranteed. The chart is more than price. It's a mirror showing the parts of your psychology you've refused to face. The market doesn't expose your strategy. It exposes your weakness. And no matter how much knowledge you gain, if your emotions control your actions, knowledge means nothing. You close your platform after another painful session, and the worst thought enters your mind: I knew exactly what I should have done, so why didn't I do it? That question haunts every trader. Because deep inside, you feel the truth: you're not losing to the market. You're losing to the version of yourself that panics. The version that wants control in a place where control doesn't exist. The version that can't accept risk without fear swallowing them whole. And so you suffer. Not because you lack skill, but because you're trying to control the one thing you can't. The outcome, the real control, the only control, was always supposed to be over yourself. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You gave the market power over your emotions, your confidence, your identity. Now the screen goes dark. The room feels silent. Your heart still beats fast, from a battle you lost without ever leaving your chair. You stare into the emptiness, realizing the cruel truth every trader eventually discovers: it's not the trade that breaks you. It's what the trade reveals about you. And then, a quiet question rises inside you, one that echoes through every trader's soul: why do I lose control, even when I know better? You lose control because every trade triggers something bigger than the market. It triggers the war inside you. A war between logic and emotion, between patience and fear, between the part of you that knows what to do and the part that refuses to wait. The truth is, you don't fail because your strategy is wrong. You fail because you're fighting the wrong enemy. The market isn't your opponent. Your emotions are. Every time you sit down to trade, two versions of you show up. One is calm, logical, patient. The version that sees the market as probabilities, that knows risk, that follows the plan. The other one is emotional, impulsive, desperate for control. It wants to be right. It wants certainty. It wants to win now. And the moment fear or greed appears, that emotional self grabs the wheel. You start to think you're making decisions, but really, you're reacting. You tell yourself, I'm in control. But you're not. You're being pulled by something deeper, something ancient. Fear of loss, fear of being wrong, fear of uncertainty. That's why no matter how many books you read, or how many strategies you test, the same cycle repeats. Because the problem isn't your system, it's your state of mind. The logical side knows exactly what to do. The emotional side just doesn't let it happen. This is the hidden war. The battle between what you know and what you feel. You can't win this war by forcing yourself to feel nothing. You can only win it by learning to stay conscious when your emotions rise. Most traders go unconscious the moment they feel pain or fear. They start clicking, chasing, reacting. But the ones who rise above it, they don't fight their emotions. They observe them. They feel the fear, but they don't become it. They see the urge to chase, but they don't move. They let the storm pass without letting it steer them. Because the goal isn't to kill emotion. It's to stop letting it control your behavior. Control doesn't mean holding tighter. It means surrendering smarter. You can't control the market, but you can control how you respond to it. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. The real solution isn't more analysis or more indicators or a new plan. It's awareness. The ability to notice the shift the second it happens. The moment when logic starts fading and emotion takes over. Because in that single moment, everything changes. If you can catch yourself there, in the space between impulse and action, you take back control. That's the difference between traders who spiral and traders who evolve. The ones who spiral get lost inside their emotions. The ones who evolve watch their emotions without judgment. They understand that fear is part of the process, not a flaw. That losing control isn't failure. It's feedback. It's the market showing you exactly where your work begins. Not in charts, not in patterns, but in your own mind. And when you finally understand that, trading stops being a war against the market and becomes a practice of mastering yourself. You stop chasing certainty. You start building trust. You stop reacting to fear. You start responding with awareness. And one day you realize something changes. The same market that once felt like chaos now feels calm. The same candles that once triggered panic now look neutral. The same losses that once broke you now teach you. Because you're no longer fighting the market. You're dancing with it. You've stopped trying to control everything, and that's exactly when you gain control over yourself. Something changes the moment you stop fighting. You stop trying to predict, to control, to force the outcome. You start to realize that trading was never about the market. It was about you. About the way you think, the way you react, the way you see uncertainty. And that realization, that quiet shift inside, becomes the turning point. The same chart you once feared becomes a mirror, showing you who you really are under pressure. You start to see that every losing trade was never punishment. It was feedback. Every emotional outburst was a signal, pointing to a wound you hadn't faced yet. Every moment of fear was a test of awareness. You were never being defeated. You were being shaped. But here's the truth no one tells you. Transformation doesn't happen in a single aha moment. It happens in repetition. It happens every day you sit down and feel that same fear rise, and you choose to stay conscious. You feel the urge to chase, but you breathe instead. You see the loss, but you don't spiral. You're still human. You still feel everything. But now, the emotions don't own you. They move through you, but they no longer move you. That's when consistency starts to grow, not in your results, but in your reactions. You stop needing the market to prove your worth. You stop using profits to measure your value. You start trading with quiet confidence. Not because you're certain of the outcome, but because you've accepted uncertainty as part of the game. That's real freedom. When you no longer need the market to behave a certain way for you to feel at peace. You plan your trade, you execute, you accept whatever happens, win or lose, and then you walk away. No anger, no euphoria, no attachment, just presence. You begin to see patterns differently. You see structure where you once saw chaos. You understand that behind every move is human emotion. The same fear, greed, and hope that once controlled you. But now, you're watching it from the outside. The same candle that used to scare you now becomes information. Every red bar, every green spike, it all tells a story. And you finally realize the market isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you where you're still attached, where you still need control, where you still chase validation. The more you learn to listen, the more peace you find. Because the moment you stop trying to win every battle, you start winning the war. Not against the market, but against your own chaos. This is where consistency begins, not in perfection, but in surrender, not in control, but in awareness. You're not the same person who started. You no longer need to prove anything. You've seen what happens when emotion leads, and you've learned what happens when awareness leads instead. And in that stillness, that clarity, something powerful returns. Trust. Trust in your process. Trust in your decisions. Trust in yourself. You no longer trade to escape fear. You trade to express discipline. You no longer chase certainty. You flow with uncertainty. You no longer measure success by how much you made today, but by how calm you remained when things didn't go your way. And that's the real victory. Because when you master yourself, the results follow naturally. The market no longer decides your mood. Your account no longer defines your identity. You've broken the loop. You've stepped out of the storm. And now when you look at the screen, there's no panic, just presence, no chase, just clarity, no fear, just flow. That's when you finally understand. Consistency isn't something you find in charts. It's something you build inside yourself. Mastery doesn't start when you finally win. It starts when you stop needing to win. When you can lose and still feel calm. When you can sit through uncertainty without trying to control it. Because control is what you used to chase. You wanted to control every trade, every outcome, every tick on the screen. But now you realize that was never the game. The real game was learning to control yourself when everything outside you becomes uncontrollable. That's the quiet line between average and mastery. You see, most traders believe mastery is some kind of final stage. A destination you reach when you know enough, when you've made enough, when you stop making mistakes. But mastery isn't about knowledge. It's about awareness. It's not about removing emotions. It's about recognizing them before they take over. It's not about never falling. It's about getting up faster, calmer, clearer each time you do. The truth is the market will always move how it wants. It doesn't owe you a signal, a setup, or a win. But what you owe yourself is composure. You begin to see it clearly. Every trade is just a reflection of your own state of mind. When you're anxious, the chart looks dangerous. When you're greedy, it looks full of opportunity. When you're calm, it looks neutral, just data, just probabilities. The market never changed, you did. That realization hits you quietly one day. You take a loss, and instead of panic, you feel stillness. You don't rush to recover it. You don't spiral into regret. You just breathe. You look at the chart, analyze, write your note, and move on. It's not coldness, it's awareness. You're no longer tied to outcomes. You've outgrown that. At first, it feels strange, this kind of peace. Because you were addicted to chaos. You used to feel alive only when your heart was racing, when your emotions were on fire. That rush was your drug. But mastery replaces that rush with rhythm. You don't crave volatility anymore, you crave precision. You don't want excitement, you want clarity. You don't trade to escape boredom, you trade to express discipline. Every small, boring, repetitive action becomes sacred. Your routine, your journaling, your review. You no longer see it as work. It's part of who you are. Because mastery isn't built in one big breakthrough. It's built in thousands of small, quiet, consistent acts. Every time you wait for your setup, that's mastery. Every time you stop yourself from chasing, that's mastery. Every time you take a loss without losing your center, that's mastery. It's invisible. No one claps for it. No one sees it. But that's what builds the kind of control that can't be shaken. You begin to notice that your relationship with the market changes completely. It's no longer you versus it. It's you with it. You stop fighting the flow and start moving with it. The red candles no longer trigger fear. They trigger focus. The green candles no longer trigger greed. They trigger awareness. You watch everything happen and simply respond with clarity. You stop needing to predict. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing validation from outcomes. You realize that the market doesn't test your strategy. It tests your state of mind. And that's when you begin to understand something profound. Discipline is not about control, it's about surrender. True control comes from the ability to let go. You can't force the market into your plan, but you can align yourself with the market's truth. And when you do that, when your actions and your awareness move in harmony, trading stops being chaos. It becomes meditation. Every trade becomes an act of mindfulness. Every decision, a reflection of your inner state. You start noticing the subtle shifts, your breathing slows, your thoughts quiet down, your focus deepens. You're no longer reacting to the market, you're responding to it. There's a difference. Reaction comes from fear. Response comes from awareness. And that difference defines your entire performance. You've stopped measuring success by your daily profit. Now success means you followed your plan. Success means you stayed present. Success means you remained calm in uncertainty, because you finally realize consistency isn't a result, it's a state. You don't become consistent by forcing outcomes. You become consistent by becoming stable inside. And that's the paradox. The more you chase control, the more you lose it. The more you surrender control, the more mastery you gain. You can't control what the market will do next, but you can always control who you are when it happens. That's your edge. That's what separates you from the rest. You start to see the market as a mirror. It reflects back every hidden part of you. Your impatience, your ego, your need to prove something. But it also shows your growth, your patience, your self-trust, your awareness. And when you finally stop taking those reflections personally, you find peace. The market becomes your teacher, not your tormentor. Every loss is feedback. Every win is feedback. Every emotion is feedback. You no longer run from it, you learn from it. Slowly everything in your process begins to simplify. You cut out noise. You stop overanalyzing. You stop searching for perfection. You find beauty in simplicity. Because mastery isn't about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing it with absolute focus. You can spend hours waiting for one clean setup, and it feels effortless. You know that if the trade comes, you'll execute it with clarity. If it doesn't, you'll walk away with peace. That's freedom. Over time, even your relationship with money changes. You stop treating it as the goal. It becomes the byproduct. You no longer trade to make money. You trade to express mastery. The money is just the scoreboard, not the source of validation. You realize the real reward isn't financial. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's that quiet confidence of knowing you can face chaos and remain calm. You've built something most traders never reach: inner stability. And that stability begins to spill into your life outside of trading. You become more patient with people, more deliberate in your choices, more aware of your emotions. You notice that the same patterns that once ruled your trading, fear, overreaction, impatience, also ruled your life. And as you change one, the other evolves too. You become centered, grounded, calm. That's what mastery really is. It's not about what happens on the screen. It's about who you become off it. Trading becomes a reflection of your growth, not the reason for it. The game that once consumed you now refines you. It shapes your patience. It sharpens your focus. It humbles your ego. It forces you to grow into the kind of person who can face uncertainty without breaking. Because that's what trading truly is: a lifelong dialogue between you and your emotions. And when you master that, the charts become simple. The results follow naturally. You don't need to force consistency. You are consistent. You don't need to search for confidence. You embody confidence. You don't need to prove discipline. You live discipline. But here's the final truth: mastery isn't permanent. It's a living process. You don't reach it once and stay there forever. Every day, the market tests you again. Every day, you either return to awareness or drift into chaos. The difference now is, you notice it. You don't judge it. You reset faster. You adjust smoother. You remain conscious longer. That's mastery. It's not perfect, it's presence. It's not controlled, it's flowing. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally intelligent. You know your patterns. You know your weaknesses. And because of that, they no longer have power over you. You've walked through fear and learned it's just noise. You've faced loss and learned it's just feedback. You've surrendered control and discovered peace. That's the circle. The journey from chaos to clarity, from fear to awareness, from survival to mastery. Now, when you look at the chart, you don't see opportunity or danger. You see yourself. You see your progress, your growth, your awareness reflected in every move. You no longer trade against the market. You trade with it, with trust, patience, and calm precision. That's when you finally understand. Trading was never about conquering the market. It was about mastering the mind that trades it. In the beginning, you thought trading was about money, about mastering charts, indicators, and systems, about finding that one perfect strategy that would finally bring certainty into your life. You believed that once you became consistent, everything would change. You'd wake up without fear, execute without hesitation, and finally feel in control of your destiny. But now, after all the chaos, after all the sleepless nights, after all the moments of silent breakdown, you see what trading really is. It was never about the market. It was always about you. Every chart, every candle, every spike of emotion was a mirror, reflecting the parts of yourself you tried to avoid: the fear of being wrong, the obsession with being right, the addiction to control, the craving for validation, the pain of uncertainty. The market didn't create these things. It simply exposed them. Because the market is pure, It has no emotion, no agenda, no bias. It doesn't care if you win or lose. It simply is. It reflects exactly what you bring to it. Nothing more, nothing less. When you brought fear, it mirrored fear. When you brought greed, it mirrored greed. When you brought patience, it mirrored calm. When you brought trust, it mirrored flow. The truth you were searching for was never hidden in the charts. It was hidden in your reactions. You see it now. All along, trading wasn't destroying you. It was transforming you. Every loss that shattered your confidence was actually peeling away another layer of illusion. Every moment of frustration was a doorway to awareness. Every emotional breakdown was a quiet breakthrough, disguised as pain. You thought trading was a battle against the market, but it was always a battle within. You fought your need to control. You fought your fear of being wrong. You fought your desire to force results. And in the end, every fight led to one realization. That control was never the goal, surrender was. Because surrender doesn't mean giving up, it means accepting what is. It means trusting the process, even when you don't trust the outcome. It means finally releasing the illusion that you ever had control in the first place. You see, the market was never unpredictable. Your emotions were. The price didn't move to hurt you. You just never learned to move with it. The volatility outside was never the problem. The volatility inside was. That's the final truth. You never needed to predict the market. You needed to understand yourself. Because once you master your inner state, everything outside becomes manageable. You stop forcing trades, because you no longer need to prove anything. You stop chasing wins, because you've learned that peace is far more valuable than profit. You stop fearing losses, because you finally see them for what they are, tuition. Each loss bought you a lesson. Each mistake revealed a blind spot. Each emotional spiral showed you where you were still attached. The market was your greatest teacher, and the tuition was pain. But that pain refined you. It built discipline. It carved patience. It burned away ego until only awareness remained. And that awareness, that quiet, unshakable awareness, is the real edge. You realize consistency was never built on strategy, it was built on state. You could trade with any setup, any method, any system. And if your state was centered, you'd find clarity in chaos. Because the goal was never to eliminate uncertainty. The goal was to find peace inside it. That's what true mastery looks like. Not emotionless, but balanced. Not fearless, but fearless enough to act through fear. You become the observer of your own mind. You watch your thoughts rise, your impulses flare, your fears whisper, but you don't obey them anymore. You pause, you breathe, you respond, you execute. That's control, not over the market, but over yourself. And in that moment, you realize that every single thing you've been chasing, certainty, consistency, confidence, was never something to be found. It was something to be built. Inside you, trade by trade, moment by moment, thought by thought, the market becomes a mirror, and your execution becomes your reflection. The way you handle uncertainty in trading becomes the way you handle uncertainty in life. The patience you practice on the chart becomes the patience you show with people. The discipline you use to follow your plan becomes the discipline you use to follow your purpose. Trading stops being a career. It becomes a form of meditation. Every candle becomes a heartbeat. Every setup becomes a test of presence. Every outcome becomes a teacher. You stop measuring success by profits and start measuring it by peace. You stop asking, how much did I make? And start asking, how well did I execute? Because you realize, money follows mastery, not emotion. Consistency follows alignment, not effort. Flow follows surrender, not control. And in that realization you finally let go. You stop trying to force the market to reward you. You stop expecting results you haven't earned emotionally. You stop blaming the market for what your mind hasn't yet mastered. You start taking full responsibility, not just for your trades, but for your reactions, your patience, your mindset. That's when everything changes. Not because the market becomes easier, but because you do. You become lighter, calmer, clearer. You still lose, but you don't suffer. You still win, but you don't get high. You move through both like water, adapting to every wave with grace. And that's the moment you realize you didn't come here to master trading. You came here so trading could master you, so it could shape you into someone unshakable, disciplined, patient, and aware. So it could teach you to detach from outcomes and find peace in the process. Because the final truth is this: consistency isn't something you achieve in the market. It's something you become as a person. Once you change within, your results follow without. Once your emotions align with your plan, your actions align with your goals. Once your mind stops needing control, your strategy finally breathes. And that's when trading stops being chaos and starts becoming art. A dance between uncertainty and trust, between patience and precision, between chaos and calm. And as you look back at your journey, you realize the market didn't break you, it revealed you. It stripped away the noise until only truth remained. It showed you that the path to mastery was never outside. It was always within. The charts were never your battlefield, they were your mirror. Every loss was a lesson, every mistake was a message, every emotional breakdown was an invitation to grow, to evolve, to awaken. You finally see it. The truth you were chasing was never about becoming a better trader. It was about becoming a better human being. The market was never asking you to be perfect. It was asking you to be present, to show up with trust, to act with integrity, to surrender with grace. That's the final truth. Trading doesn't reward control. It rewards surrender. Not surrender as weakness, but surrender as wisdom. The wisdom to know that you can't control what happens next, but you can always control who you are when it does. That's where consistency begins. Not on the chart, but in your heart. Not in the setup, but in the state of mind behind it. Not in outcomes, but in awareness. And when you finally understand that, when you truly live that, the game changes forever. Because the moment you stop chasing control, you finally become free. In the end, you realize trading was never about winning or losing. It was about awakening. Every loss stripped away illusion. Every win revealed who you still were beneath it. You see now, the charts were only a reflection, a mirror showing your fears, your ego, your need for control. And once you stop fighting that reflection, everything changes. You stop chasing trades that make you feel worthy. You stop needing outcomes to validate your progress. You start to see the beauty in the uncertainty itself. Because it's no longer a threat, it's a teacher. You move differently now. You no longer trade to escape fear. You trade to understand it. You no longer seek comfort. You seek clarity. You no longer demand certainty. You trust the flow. That's the point of freedom. The moment when the noise fades and you finally hear your own voice beneath it all. Calm, grounded, unshaken. You understand now mastery was never about controlling the market. It was about mastering the mind that trades it. You've stopped reacting. You've started responding. You've stopped chasing peace through profits and found peace through presence. That's where consistency lives. That's where freedom begins. And that's the ultimate truth the market was trying to show you all along. When you stop needing control, you discover something even greater. Trust. Trust in your process. Trust in your growth. Trust in yourself. Because once you learn to trust, truly trust, you no longer trade to win. You trade to express who you've become. And that's when you realize you've already won.